Hoyoverse just announced the 5.0 update a few days ago, and one of my first reactions to it was that it's about time we finally reconsidered how we view the weapon banner. Saying that the weapon banner has historically been controversial would be a tremendous understatement. Thanks to the rampant anti-vertical investment bias in popular Western Genshin media, the weapon banner has been a taboo for many players. While I've always thought that the weapon banner was quite underrated and unjustly vilified, the new 5.0 update brought forth changes that further shuffled the cards in its favor to the point where we can no longer avoid this conversation. At this point, I dare say that it's kind of just a good idea, period, for everyone to pull on the weapon banner at some point.
Oh my god!
You heard what I said correctly. Now sit down and let me explain it to you. The changes to the weapon banner are very simple. Some homie at Hoyoverse woke up one day and decided to reduce the fate point requirement of the epitomized path mechanic from 2 to just 1. In other words, you're now guaranteed the specific rate up 5-star weapon that you selected in at most 2 5-star drops instead of the previous 3. That's it. And yes, it's a huge deal. So, why have players traditionally avoided weapon banners? A big reason was that it was expensive to guarantee the 5-star weapon that you wanted, hence the popular sentiment, the weapon banner is a scam. Even though hard pity has always been lower on the weapon banner at 80 instead of 90, the possibility of losing the gamble twice made the worst case scenario extremely cringe. You needed over 200 pulls to actually guarantee a weapon. But now, with the new changes, you can secure a specific weapon for just around 140-150 pulls, a massive reduction. This makes getting a 5-star that you want on the weapon banner objectively cheaper, both on average and in the worst case scenario, compared to the character banner, even with the new 55-45 character banner gacha buff taken into account. I believe that this change will seriously alter the age-old C1 versus R1 debate for every new character and rerun moving forward. Historically, if C1 and R1 offered similar bonuses, C1 was almost always favored because it was just easier to guarantee. Yet that's no longer the case. The weapon is now cheaper, and of course it still remains transferable across multiple characters on your account, if you do get it. I'm not saying that R1s are always just gonna be better than C1s to go for now, but they certainly have a lot more going for them now than before. You saw this coming. It's not a Butterfur video without me criticizing something that someone else said at some point. So enjoy this segment. A popular argument against pulling on the weapon banner is that the game is purely balanced around C0 characters and 4-star weapons. The logic goes like this. All 5-star weapons do is add bigger numbers, which isn't necessary because you can clear content anyway with just the 4-stars. So the advice is to always pull for more characters instead. While this statement isn't entirely invalid, it's what I would call disgustingly out of touch with the position that the majority of players, especially the newer ones, are in today. If you don't like what I said, I know who you are, so look me in the eyes. How many refinements do you have on your Favonius sword? How about your Favonius lance? And how long exactly have you been playing for again? Yeah, that's what I thought. Motherfucker, you've been collecting 4-stars and using them as agenda fuel since day 1 of this goddamn game. Here's the harsh reality. For all you relatively new and possibly free-to-play players, you're simply never going to get all the good 4-star weapons with adequate refinements that they use to justify why 5-star weapons aren't that much better. It's just how it is, whether you like it or not. The 4-star pool is so bloated that your chances of pulling a specific 4-star weapon that you want from the character or standard banner are not present in the room with us anymore. And this issue will only get worse with time. So, if you want multiple copies of Favonius weapons or something of the sort, your best and only shot at guaranteeing them is literally to pull on a weapon banner where they're rated up. So yeah, this argument that everyone can just rely on the good 4-star weapons and never pull for a 5-star weapon is ridiculous. Because you can't get said 4-star weapons either if you don't pull on the weapon banner. It's like recommending against pulling certain 5-star characters by saying that everyone can use their C6 Xingqiu, which they magically have or are obligated to go for, instead all over again. Do you know how stupid that sounds? And I'll keep bringing this shit up, by the way, until the day that the average player finally stops getting fed this bullshit. Anyway, if you're okay with using craftables, 3-star weapons, and whichever event weapons came out after you started playing, then all the power to you. Honestly, I respect it. But most people aren't content with putting all their beloved characters on that shit. In fact, I don't think most newer free-to-play players can even clear the new abysses with okay teams if they don't have weapons. Or if they can, it's probably not without hair loss and tons of unnecessarily wasted time and resin. I made another video that touches on how to build a strong account for newer players, if they care about the quote-unquote meta, which you should totally check out after this one, by the way. I'm quite proud of it. But the TLDR is that most players simply don't care about every character and playstyle in the game. So if you want to consistently beat difficult content, why not start by focusing on making the characters and teams that you actually love playing already able to clear everything comfortably first? Why would it be better to always prioritize random new characters that may get benched after a week than it is to pull something that guarantees making clearing a variety of content with your current favorites easier and more consistent? Dismissing all vertical investment because it's not necessary completely misses the point of why people invest in the characters that they love in the first place, and also severely overlooks the reality of how much investment is actually required to clear the abyss today as a new player who hasn't been hoarding 4-star weapons and characters since day 1. For newer players, think of it this way. If you love playing someone like Risley, for example, and you know his signature weapon Cashflow Supervision boosts his damage by 40% compared to some goddamn craftable, why wouldn't you want it? Why wouldn't you want something that brings your favorite character a massive step closer to comfortably carrying your Abyss runs with his unique playstyle? I'm ranting, but the bottom line is this. Nowadays, you need more investment than ever to clear, and going for 5-star weapons to improve a character or team is no less efficient and fundamentally no different than pulling for 5-star constellations, specific 4-star constellations, 4-star weapons, or new units meant to be partnered with them. Whether you pull for Risley C1, Shenhe, Xiangling constellations, I don't know, or Cashflow Supervision, it's all the same. And if the weapon banner looks especially tantalizing, go for it. You'll get plenty of Favonius weapons along the way. The 5.0 changes finally gave me an opportunity to discuss just how much the landscape of gacha and investment recommendations need to change, especially for new players. Early vertical investment, which may include going after some 5-star weapons, is good, because you won't clear without it. All the 4 stars that you used to be able to rely on eventually getting to clear, yeah, you're not getting those anymore. It's just not how the game works nowadays. If you want a good weapon, 5-star or 4-star, guess what? You're pulling on the weapon banner. This taboo around weapon banners needs to end ASAP. At the end of the day, clearing difficult content in Genshin, if you care about doing so, is all about doing it with your favorite characters, in my opinion. And the updated weapon banners might just give you the tools to do that more efficiently than ever before. And as a final disclaimer, if all you care about is trying as many characters and teams as possible, don't care about clearing Abyss or other difficult content, at least not within a reasonable time frame, and don't care about the immaculate drip of certain 5-star weapons, then obviously never pull on the weapon banner. You have your goals, prioritize those. That's all I have for you today. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you think I'm insane, please comment that too. I'd actually prefer if you leave a hate comment on every video I've ever made. Anyway, see you soon. Butterfur out.